tell us about the piece de camera that you had to redo? They're very specific about, and it's about, you talk about the old people being revered, but even when you're talking about certain things, you have to present yourself in a specific way.
Well, I mean, anything to do with the likenesses of the great leaders, and there is on Mansoday Hill, there are two enormous, sort of 20-metre high figures of these two men. That's a very sacred part of the city, and indeed North Korea. And yet we were there were sort of wedding parties being photographed there and all that. Certain conditions you could never actually, you had to take, if you took a photograph or shot them, they had to be in their entirety. No close-ups, no cutaways. It had to be the two figures in their entirety. So we had to do a piece to camera quite a long way back, with me looking up there, and I did what I thought was actually quite a good piece to camera. I was quite pleased with it, and I kind of was looking at it, and then I looked back, and there were all the, oh dear, and I thought, what have I said now? And Neil came up and said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to do it again. And I said, well, just tell me, what I said. If I said something wrong, just put me, no, you didn't say anything wrong, it's just you had your hand in your pocket. And that was what had affronted them. You cannot have your hand in your pocket in front of the great leaders, it's disrespectful. And for it, they were always coming up and checking my jacket from behind, because the shot was from behind. And I had my bag, my sort of trademark bag, and occasionally it got a bit rucked up, and suddenly two people would rush up and put the bag like that, because again, you had to look just right. And the two leaders, I mean, they do look very impressive, but they also look very accessible. They've got overcoats on, they look very nice, they've got these nice glasses, they look like someone coming to, I can say this, sell you insurance or something like that. They don't look angry, they don't look threatening, they're not menacing. We didn't see much of that in North Korea at all. And they're smiling, everybody's smiling all the time, and they're always, whenever they're pictured, they're smiling benignly and wearing glasses very well. I
love as well the fact that one of the statues, his overcoat was changed recently as well. From what the other...
Well, it was a sort of anorak thing before, I think, and then they changed it to something slightly more graceful, if you can say that. But, I mean, the fact they changed one of those statues must have taken, a year to do. It's because they're huge statues, and they're all bronze, and they've got to be specially sort of reshaped and all that. But, yes, they gave him a bit of a makeover.
Got rid of the anorak. We're going to see a clip of the school right now. That stayed with me for days after when I watched it, because her delivery is...
Yes, I watch it again and I feel slightly sort of tearful. And I mean, that wasn't prepared. She wasn't pushed forward. And indeed, I chose the people I spoke to in that class. And I thought, yes, we talked to 4 guys, we should have a girl as well. And she said she was a writer, and then recited this poem. And I didn't know, we have a translation here, I didn't know what the poem was about, but her passion and her feeling as it mounted up was just quite extraordinary. At the end we were all a bit tearful. I mean, it's a poem about the great leaders and about the sacred mountain, Mount Pektu, which is where the great leader came from. Well, it's the sacred mountain of Korea itself, but it's certainly the place where Kim Jong-il hid away. Is it Kim Jong-il? I can't remember. Kim Il-sung, thank you, director here. Kim Il-sung hid away there when he was fighting the Japanese in the 1930s. So it's quite important to them, that mountain. And she was suffused with feeling and reverence and devotion. Such devotion there. That was kind of powerful.
The fact that she said, though, that she wanted to be a famous writer was quite a startling thing for her to say, really, isn't it? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because it's a sort of artistic activity rather than anything else.
Yeah, because it's the idea of fame it seems completely,
Yeah, the
idea of being...
fame part of it, yes. Yeah. I suppose so. I think she just meant she wanted to do the very best she could for her country with the thing that she could do best, which was writing. So, I mean, fame is very sort of relative to the leaders. You can never be personally famous. They control everything, but you can do your very, very best. I think that's what she was saying.
And it's interesting as well because I have the impression that nothing gets into the country, nothing gets out of the country. So in terms of, I'm really intrigued in what her points of reference are when it comes to poetry and literature. And you're saying that you're the guide. She obviously knows about literature outside the UK, which I found really fascinating as well.
Yes, I mean, you could see that they were learning English, which was interesting. But as you say, they don't really know much about the rest of the world. They have their own internet system. You can't make calls out. We couldn't use our phones. We couldn't connect with the rest of the world. So it's very, very much enclosed world. But later on, when we were going out of Pyongyang, we went to an area which is a sort of rather beautiful gorge with a river running down. And we went, myself and So Yang, my guide, walked up, and by that time the minders, I think, knew us well enough to let us go, and they're all absolutely tired out, as we climbed further up. They'll say, we're going to stop here. So actually, when I talked on camera to So Yang at that point, they weren't vetting what we were saying, and she volunteered the fact that she read Shakespeare, and she knew about Wordsworth, and she knew about Jane Austen, and so one could really, I wish we'd have had more time to have a conversation about what she'd gained from them.
Do you think there is any critical thought amongst the new generation there from what you kind of saw and experienced?
Well, I mean, I don't, not from what I saw and experienced. We just didn't get there. It looked as though they were giving me what they felt they were allowed to say. But as I say, So Yang and I had certain conversations, and she was clearly interested in the rest of the world. She was interested in what happened in London. I showed her pictures on my phone of my grandchildren and all that, and she loved all that. And she was quite jokey, and so there was obviously something there which was not critical of the regime, but definitely looking for freedom somewhere else, to know about the rest of the world. And this is a really key thing I felt about the whole journey, is that North Korea, I felt as though they were preparing and they wanted to open up to the rest of the world, because they've had to. They spent all their money on these missiles and all that, the farming, the agricultural and food supplies are very, very scarce out in the countryside. So now they've got to get something back. And therefore they're building great tourist resorts. We saw an airport, an entire airport, which is totally empty. There were no planes there at all. But the airport is built, waiting for people to come to this tourist resort, which it will serve. So, and why build that if they didn't really want to get tourists in from China, maybe from the rest of the world?
And they let you see that? They didn't
yes.
Have,
Oh, yes. Yeah, exactly. And they were prepared to talk about that and say, we're going to have wonderful things. And evidently they had people who'd gone to Disneyland in Paris to look at how you build resorts like that, how you design them. So money had been invested in this opening up. So it isn't just a political rapprochement. I think it's something they need for their survival now. But when they do open up, then what happens to the sort of regimented Kim family thought? That people are going to say, well, they do it differently in another part of the world, maybe we should do it differently. I just don't know. It's a very, very interesting time, I think.